All right, here we go. There we go. All right, shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug. This is going to be a brief recording, and we could say early week meeting, midweek meeting for about how we should be behaving on the Sabbath, particularly in the assembly, within the assembly. How so we're going to first deal with that, and then we'll deal with about offenses, what we should do if we um, have an offense against a brother or sister before the Sabbath, and so we're going to deal with that. Secondly, and then thirdly, we're gonna deal with how the assembly should be run, and the role of women and men in the assembly. As far as authority and everything in the headship. So we'll go through that last. Okay, so I'm gonna start us off here, and you know what? Actually, hold on a second. I should be blowing the trumpet because that is something that we're supposed to be doing when calling a meeting. So let me just blow it real quick. Praise Yahuwah. All right, so we're gonna get going. Let's see here. First, we're gonna go to Jeremiah 17, 19, and 27. I'll put it on the shared screen for those that don't have scriptures and want to follow along. So here we go. Shared screen. Start now. Allow. Okay. So now we're on the shared screen. Let's see here. What do we got? Where's my Bible program? All right, here we go. No. Let's see here. Okay, we're gonna go with Jeremiah 17. Actually, you know what? I'll use the Masoretic here because sometimes the chapter numberings are off in Jeremiah in the Septuagint. So I think I'm gonna use the Restored Name King James here. Let's see here. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, some verses 19 to 27. Thus says Yahuwah unto me, go and stand at the gate of the children of the people, and whereby the kings of Judah come in, and by which they go out, and in all the gates of Jerusalem, and say to them, hear ye the word of Yahuwah, you kings of Judah, and all Judah, and inhabitants of Jerusalem that enter in by these gates. Thus says Yahuwah, take heed to yourselves, and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem. We got a little cross reference here, John 5:10. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Nehemiah 13:19. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem became to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And come with my servants set I at the gates, that there should no burden be brought into the Sabbath day. So that's physically talking about burden, but I'm pretty sure we can apply this safely, apply this spiritually without going too loose with it. Like, do not bring any type of burden that you have during the week on the Sabbath day. So we're going to continue on here. Verse 22. Let's see. Neither carry forth a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day, neither do you any work, but set apart the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. But they obeyed not, neither inclined their ear, but made their neck stiff, that they might not hear nor receive instruction. And it shall come to pass, if you diligently hearken unto me, says Yahuwah, to bring in no burden through the gates of the city on the Sabbath day, but set apart the Sabbath day to do no work therein. Okay. Verse 25, then shall there enter into the gates of the city kings and princes sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots and on horses, they and their princes, the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and this city shall remain forever. And they shall come from the cities of Judah and from the places about Jerusalem, from the land of Benjamin and from the plain and the mountains. Okay, hold on. And from the south bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices and grain offerings and incense, and bringing sacrifices of praise unto the house of Yahuwah, which obviously we can do today. We might not be able to do physical sacrifices, but even back then they had sacrifices of praise, the bulls of our lips. Okay. But if you will not hearken unto me to set apart the Sabbath day and not to bear a burden, this is like the third time he says it in this chapter, even entering in at the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, then will I kindle a fire. Notice how he's spiritualizing kindle a fire in the gates thereof, and it shall devour the places of Jerusalem, and it shall not be quenched. And you're going to see later on the significance of kindling a fire and how it seems here we can spiritualize the commandment of kindling a fire as bringing a burden. It seems like it's one and the same from what I'm seeing here. So that's verse 27 there of Jeremiah 17. So again, this is very important not to bring a burden on the Sabbath. Okay, so that's one part of this, is not bringing a burden. I also want to go to now Isaiah 58:13, because this is going to deal with how we should be acting on the Sabbath. Okay, other than not just bringing burdens. So this is going to deal more in depth of how we should be keeping his Sabbath as a assembly. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your own pleasures, so do not do your own fleshy desires, whether sinful or not, just stuff that you do during the week, not to do your own will on the Sabbath, uh, on the set apart day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the set apart of Yahuwah honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure. Again, don't find your own ways or your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words. And that's where I wanted to focus here, nor speaking your own words. Then shall you delight yourself in Yahuwah, and I will cause you to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father. For the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken it. So verse 14 gives us the baraka for if we do what he says to do in verse 13. Okay, so that's pretty much self-explanatory then. All right, and we will be going back to why the burden thing. And so let me just see here. I do have one other scripture here before we go back to the burden thing. And if you have offense against a brother, let's see here. Okay, yeah, here we go. About the fire thing. You shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day. Okay. All right. So basically, this physical application would be like physically starting kindling a fire. Back then, they would have to gather wood from the woods, and they would have to actually start a fire, like literally kindle a fire. So kindling a fire, uh, you know, has nothing to do with you putting heat on in your own home, or you reheating a meal in the microwave or something like that. So this is specifically talking about kindling a fire. Like they would have to rub sticks together to actually start a fire. I know because I used to be a Boy Scout, I used to have to do stuff like that. So that's what kindling a fire is. Now, spiritually, if we take the spiritual application of this could be, I think it's pretty much connected to bringing a burden on the Sabbath day would be kindling a fire, or having contention or with your brother or sister, or catching offenses. And I think Matthew 5:23, that would be a good transition to this, to Matthew 5:23-24. What happens if you have something against your brother or sister? If your brother or sister has sinned against you, vice versa, you should not hold on to that bitterness all week until the Sabbath. So let's go here to Matthew 23:24, 5:23-24. It says, therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, meaning your brother or sister has offenses against you, leave there your gift before the altar. Now remember too, in the Melchizedek priesthood, we have no choice but to spiritualize this because we're not in a Levitical priesthood. There is no physical gifts in a Melchizedek priesthood. So we're kind of forced to spiritualize this application into basically we give gifts from our lips, praise. And even Paul says in the Brit Hadashah that our sacrifice is a living sacrifice, meaning obedience to the Torah is our sacrifice to the Father, which would include the Sabbath. So that's why I'm tying this into the Sabbath here. Leave there your gift before the altar, meaning don't offer it yet. Don't offer praise or offer works, your obedience out of love to the Father in his Torah until you reconcile with your brother. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gifts. So that's Matthew chapter 5, verses 23 to 24, showing we need to make amends with our family and Yahuwah first before giving our gift, our praise, our obedience to his Torah. Okay, now we're going to go to the last portion here, and this deals with the place of the men and women in the assembly and about speaking out of terms or how the assembly is supposed to be ran. First, we're going to deal with just a very general scripture that Paul, but being inspired by the Ruach HaKodesh, the set-apart spirit, tells us we need to have things in order. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 40. Let all things be done decently and in order, meaning, and if we read through this whole chapter, he talks about how we need to do things at certain times. If a prophet's prophesying, let him prophesy. If someone's speaking in tongues, make sure there's an interpreter there to hear them. If not, if there's no interpreter, they really should not be speaking in tongues. If there's not in certain situations, they are only to speak to Yahuwah if there's no interpreter. And there's supposed to be an order, basically. There's supposed to be order. Certain people are to speak at certain times. It's not to be all chaotic, right? So I think that's self-explanatory there, and that's why we are having this new format to fit what Scripture says. So that was 1 Corinthians 14, verse 40. Okay, now we're going to move on to the topic about women's role in the assembly here, okay? So let's see here. I think we should get some context on this here. So let's start at verse 10. But which becomes women professing reverence with Tob works. So this means reverence, fear, lovingly fear for the Father and for the leaders of the assembly. Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. So I would interpret verse 11 here. I think it's safe to interpret it, meaning a woman should be silent unless she needs to ask something, or she can also learn. She's actually supposed to learn from her covering, her husband. But if I know we have sisters that don't have a physical covering, like don't have a husband, that are either widows or such, where they need to ask questions, and I'm led to honestly believe if they have questions, should wait until the study's over or until whoever the leaders of the assembly are teaching is over, and to ask off the record they have a question about something. That's what I've been led to do so far with this new structuring according to Scripture. Verse 12, but I suffer not a woman to teach nor usurp. I like how the King James, the Restored in King James says usurp authority over the man, but be in silence. And this is something that actually is a temptation for our sisters that they deal with the indwelling sin because of what happened in the garden. And I really want to go also to Genesis 3:16, and we're gonna go there. Let's see here. I'm trying to exit here, but it's giving me issues here. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna exit out of this app real quick, and we're gonna go to. Let's see if I can find this real quick. We're gonna go to the Genesis 3:16 in the NLT translation, because it seems like it's connecting to 1 Timothy 2:12 here. And this is right after the fall of mankind. So in context, this is right after the fall of mankind. Let's see here. Okay. And okay. All right. Use Bible Gateway here. Okay. Apologize for all these stupid notifications here that are messing up my screen here. Here we go. So Genesis 3:16 NLT. All right, it says here, then he said to the woman, meaning Yahusha said to the woman, I will sharpen the pain of your pregnancy, and in pain you will give birth. And you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. So we see here that this temptation for women to always want to have authority over their husband, in general, whether speaking or just in general in teaching, even, which Paul is referring to in 1 Timothy 2:12, it seems to be a fleshy temptation for our sisters that we have to help them through and admonish them and help them through this. This is something that over time our sisters will be able to control with allowing the set apart spirit to convict them of these things, and allowing scripture just to tell them, to admonish them. What they have to be careful of is that temptation to want to rule over men. Seems to have happened right after the fall. That temptation was already there. So and I would just like to end to say, this is not an attack on any of the brethren, any of the brothers or sisters. This is just so that we can be more mature in the assembly and thrive in the assembly, and be able to do things according to scripture. All scripture is profitable, 2 Timothy 3:16-17, and given inspiration by Yahuwah. It's Yah breathed. Okay. And it's there for our reproof, our correction in righteousness. So I pray, my prayer would be, anyone that's going to see this recording, I pray that this would edify you and help you understand the way the assembly is supposed to be ran. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to our fellowship. We're on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel, Douglas Bonensegna. You can find me on there. And thank you again for listening to this study. Shalom.
Shalom. Very good.